Getting our friends together isn't as easy as it used to be. We get it. Life comes at you fast. But trust us, your pals are desperate for a good hang. And when they hear you stock the party with drinks from Drizzly, they'll be banging down your door. Let Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery, take care of the supplies. All you need is an excuse. It doesn't even have to be a good one. It's your dog's birthday. The loquats are finally ripe. Whatever. With Drizzly, you can compare prices on a massive selection of beer, wine, and spirits and get them delivered straight to your door, which means you can entice the crew to leave their houses without ever leaving yours. Whatever the occasion, download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com. Today. Must be 21 plus. Not available in all locations. Man, I wish they had Drizzly when I used to play D&D and Riffs. Maybe it's time for me to start again. Thanks, Drizzly.
Breast milk science. It's a thing, and it's our thing. We're By Heart. Our mission is simple. Make the best infant formula in the world. We partnered with breast milk scientists, world-class doctors, and passionate parents to write a new recipe from scratch. And while we put a lot into By Heart, there's a long list of things you won't see on our ingredient list, like corn syrup, soy, or palm oil. Curious if By Heart is right for your baby? New customers can shop the starter pack and get 2 cans for the price of 1 at byheart.com/getstarted. This is a limited time offer. Additional terms and conditions apply.
The podcast playground.
Hooray! Hey, it's my song. Let's sing it. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Come on, it's gonna be fucking awesome. You know the words. It's gonna be fucking awesome. That's it, sing. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Yeah!
Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? We're back again for a fabulous Saturday morning episode of the Coolest Geek Alive. And what's more appropriate to talk about on Saturday morning than cartoons? Because, we're not exactly going to be talking about cartoons exclusively, but we're going to be talking about something that I think is very near and dear to people who love cartoons' heart. Gargoyles. And the long anticipation that animation lovers have been on, waiting to see this animation brought to life on the big screen. If you're a fan of the Disney Afternoon from back in the day, if you don't know what the Disney Afternoon was, when kids like me were coming home from school, when we were little, there was a block of animated entertainment that Disney put out. And there was a lot of very successful shows here, from Tailspin and DuckTales and Chip and Tail's Rescue Rangers, Bonkers. There's so many. Gummy Bears was one of the first ones. All these shows had different lengths of runs, but one of the ones that sticks out the most is a show that was aimed a little bit at the slightly older kids who were coming home maybe a little bit later from school. The show Gargoyles was decidedly dark. It was sort of designed to compete with Batman the Animated Series, which was coming out at the time, which Batman the Animated Series is one of the greatest animated series of all time, and so is Gargoyles. Gargoyles was created by Greg Weisman. Greg Weisman has gone on to do so many other things. He is active in Hollywood right now at this moment. I know Greg. Greg's not like, Greg's a friend of mine, but because I was a fan of his. And I wanted to hire him. And when I started my company, one of the first things that I did with the Killer Rabbits company was we did a book for Four Horsemen Studios, who are the toy sculptors who make the Mythic Legions fantasy action figures that you might have finally discovered. They're the most amazing action figures. These guys are the most amazing sculptors in the business. They used to work at McFarlane Toys. And I brought in Greg Weisman to create the world, or I should say, build upon the creation that were already created by Eric Treadaway and the other members of Four Horsemen Studios, and create something that could be turned into an animated series. And boy, did Greg deliver. If you've ever had a chance to read the Mythic Legions art book, Greg Weisman did an amazing job. He does an amazing job on anything he does. He's known also, you might recognize his name if you don't know Gargoyles very well, as being the showrunner for the very successful Young Justice animated series. This man is a hit maker. This man's name amongst people like me, who, as I've told you before, tastemakers, the people who are paying attention, the people who are reading the source material, the people who are following along with these mythologies and these stories, following these creators, We are the ones who dictate the success of these franchises. Hollywood thinks that they can just take it right out of our hands, and if they do what they do, they'll just as likely to have a hit with anything else that they do. It's not true. It's not true. The moment they stop listening to the people that matter, that is the first signal to the geek crowd that this thing might not be the thing we hoped it would be. And Disney has made such a huge, huge mistake not hiring Greg Weisman for Gargoyles. They just announced their live-action series, quote, reboot, which it kept saying reboot everywhere, and I hated seeing reboot. It's a live-action version. It should be a live-action version of Disney's Gargoyles, not a reboot. A reboot suggests, like, we got to rethink this thing. Wait a second. Why do you got to rethink this thing? You don't got to rethink this thing. This thing has been a sleeper. No, it's been a sleeper hit for a long time because people have been waiting and waiting and hoping. I mean, since that animated series debuted, fans like me were like, holy shit, can you imagine if Goliath was real? I mean, and kids like me, we've been waiting for practical effects, and I have very, 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 very low expectations that there will be any special effects used, like practical special effects used for Disney's Gargoyles series that they're doing. They don't do that. They don't do that. So, I mean, already we're at a bit of a disadvantage. And they didn't hire Greg Weisman. They hired a studio called Atomic Monsters Studio, or Atomic Monster Studio. I believe James Wan is associated with that. He's the Aquaman guy, Fast and Furious guy, a couple other things he's done. He's a very talented dude. That's cool. It's cool that they've got some talented people involved. But the Disney announcement should have said, Gargoyles live action series coming to Disney Plus, executive produced by Greg Weisman. Period. That's it. That's exactly what you should have did. You should have said executive produced by Greg Weisman. I understand you might make an argument, well, he shouldn't be on the writing staff. He writes animation. I tend to think that's bullshit. I know that we got Ahsoka right now, which is kind of demonstrating that somebody like Dave Filoni, transitioning from animation to television, that, or live action television, I should say, that he's not exactly ready to make that shift. But I promise you, he's an exception. Wonderful creative people exist, and they can work in any freaking medium. They just need to be given the support that they need. Greg Weisman has proven himself time and time and time again, and Disney looks like idiots not connecting him to this series. This happens all the time, and it's really hard to definitively say why. But there are so many brilliant creative people not asked to return to the franchise they helped make famous. Right now what's going on with Marvel, we got Daredevil Born Again, and even the retitling of the series was said to be a fucking scam, according to people close to it, and confirmed by producer Stephen S. DeKnight, who was the original showrunner for Daredevil, that literally changing the name of the show to Daredevil Born Again somehow was contractually screwing them all out of money. And this is part of the thing. I mean, if you give somebody who has accrued a certain amount of credibility in a space, if you give them the reins, you're essentially having to give a certain amount of control and trust over to them, which you should. But Hollywood doesn't like to do that. Hollywood doesn't like to give their executive power. These producers, the people in the rooms, these people who are greenlighting projects and stuff, they rule the roost, and they don't want to give up their power. You see it in comics all the time. There were clear candidates for various jobs, people who clearly proved they were right creators to take over the series, and then it goes to someone else. A really good example of this was like Mark Waid, who's obsessed with Superman, and he couldn't get in to do Superman for a long time because I think him and Dan DiDio, who generally I like, but him and Mark seem to be in a bit of a pissing contest. I don't know why they were in a pissing contest about this, but the best man for the job, Mark Waid, wasn't hired for the job by Dan DiDio, and that was a big mistake Dan made. And little ego kind of decisions like that, they're the worst. Like Dan DiDio, I know Dan. Dan's the one who got me in at DC. He hired me. Dan is a very good guy. But unfortunately, in like the back rooms of these things, clearly Pissing contests take place, battles of egos and wills take place, and that sometimes gets in the way of us getting the right people for the jobs into these positions. Another thing that would happen in comics that's just sort of like adjacent to this is great talents weren't recognized. Somebody would write a little miniseries, and the miniseries wasn't successful, it was low sales, but it was clearly good. And nobody in editorial seemed to be able to tell how good the people who were working on the thing were, even though it wasn't a success. And that person usually wasn't given a higher profile book immediately. Why? Why don't you give that person a new higher profile book? Build on the people who are recognizing that it's good. Why doesn't it happen? It doesn't happen because of power. They don't want to give anyone too much power. And it's a lame game that's played out across all of art and entertainment, where ego is a little more obvious, but also it's played out everywhere, in every layer of society. The right person not getting the job because of reasons other than who is best for the job. And I don't know about you, but that's all that I care about. I want the best person for the job. Opportunity and diversity are wonderful and important on a totally different level, which is why doors should always be open. But it's mostly so we don't accidentally keep out the best person for the job. Okay? We want people to have opportunities. We want a diversity of our options because somewhere amongst that diversity is the best person for the job. And the best person for the job is the one we want. Okay? It's just, that's what we want. We want the best person for the job. Honestly, it's so easy to get new voices in, too. By, you keep the best person for the job and you just, promote them up the chain. So now that they oversee someone else who you'd like to give a chance to. You got people, I'd like to see him or whatever. That's great. But just keep the people best to work on the thing as close to it as possible. All right. So I made a list for films, TV, whatever. Properties essentially that have been mishandled in this way before, as to Gargoyles and Greg Weisman not being hired, as to Daredevil Born Again and Stephen S. DeKnight not being brought in to continue what he was doing on the Netflix series. These are huge mistakes. Both of these examples are Disney. Disney has somebody, they're waiting in the wings. Weisman has talked about, he dreams, it's to be so great. Yeah, one day. There's been talk about it. Da, 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 da. And I seem to remember Weisman saying that basically, if it ever happened, he didn't think he would have anything to do with it because basically they think he's an animation guy and he gets relegated to his thing. And it's insane. Fucking insane. You want to hear some more insane choices that have been made over the years? And some of these, there's a lot more, obviously. I just kind of went until I had enough little stories for myself that I was like, okay, these are good examples, but there are more. And if you have any more, feel free to write me at jesseblaze@jessesnider.com. Remind me of any of them. Like I said, over the years, it's really easy when things get announced and you go, really? Him or that? Why are they doing that? Shouldn't they hire this guy or shouldn't they brought in that guy? And it doesn't happen. But looking back in hindsight, you tend to just remember the ones that were the most shocking to you at the time. So these are the 10 that have been most shocking to me throughout the years, okay? At number 10, I've got Blade. All right, the original Blade was directed by this dude, Stephen Norrington. Granted, Norrington unfortunately went on to direct the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen adaptation of Alan Moore's comic book with Sean Connery, which is famously a huge bomb and a terrible movie, even though it does have some cool style, like Stephen Norrington is known for. The first Blade movie, the tone, the vibe of it, it's freaking awesome, man. It's awesome. He brought an adaptation of a very obscure Marvel Universe character, delivered it exceptionally with the help of David S. Goyer writing the scripts. But really, it was the style. It was so cool. It really had a vibe. It was just like this low-rent Batman kind of thing. It spoke to the fans. People loved it. But Norrington had tons of creative differences with the company when he came back for the second movie. What are you doing? He just did a good job. He just did the thing. They had so much creative differences that he said, I gotta go. I'm bailing out. Bailed out and went and I guess did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And they brought in Guillermo del Toro. Now, they got lucky here. Blade 2 is actually an improvement upon Blade 1. Blade 2 is freaking incredible, honestly. But I give that to Guillermo del Toro. So much of his fingerprints are all over that thing. From special effects makeup and casting. Just, that's really the beginning of seeing the talent that Guillermo del Toro possessed. So they got lucky. They went from really talented Stephen Norrington, who kicked it out of the park, and now we got Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo del Toro had such a terrible time working on the film, he didn't return for the third. Okay? Not once, but twice. They fucked up their own success. And then they brought in David S. Goyer, who had written the series, the trilogy, but he had never directed anything before. Or I think he had actually directed like one thing before, but it wasn't really like a big deal, anything. Blade Trinity's not the best. I love the first two. And it's such a bummer that it ended on such a down note. I would have been so interested to see Norrington brought back or Guillermo del Toro be able to do a third film. And the idea that Guillermo had such a bad time working with the studio, you're fucking up. If you literally have forced Guillermo del Toro to leave, you're the problem. You are the problem. There are so many brilliant... You hear this all the time in the news. So-and-so's announced, he's attached to the thing, and then creative differences, so-and-so decided to leave. Sometimes you're like, oh, thank God. But a lot of times you're like, son of a... No. He was right... what do you mean? Why not? And this was one of them. I mean, really, Blade 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I know it seems like maybe a superficial choice, but there's just so much to enjoy about that movie. I feel like it's just candy for my eyes and just such a good time. And, and that's why I like this stuff, honestly. Escapist entertainment. I like to have a nice time, man. Blade 2 is some of the best time you can have watching a movie as far as I'm concerned. Blade 1 is almost as exceptionally fun, too. So there you go. The Blade franchise, what happened to Blade franchise? That shouldn't have been. Like if I was the executive here and talks broke down, the first time with Norrington, hey, Norrington, how do we work this out? What can we get you to at least like be an executive producer? We'll bring in Guillermo del Toro. I want you to oversee the thing. Or how about Guillermo? Talks broke down. He's getting at it. Okay, Guillermo, we really want to have you back. What is it going to take creatively to get you in the room here? And then that's it, man. And then you got your franchise back on track. You don't have a bomb third movie. You've got a successful third movie. You build and you build and you build and you build. They're so bad at they'll start to build something and they don't even seem to realize that they were beginning to build something, and now it's gone. I just feel like it's like that South Park episode. It's like, well, okay, we put your money into a savings loan and it's gone. All right, you got a little success with this Blade franchise and it's gone. All right, you got a little. It's just so funny. It applies to like every geek culture fan. Oh my God, Marvel! It's the biggest cinematic universe, and it's gone. All right, you bought the biggest sci-fi franchise in the world. It's Star Wars, and it's gone. And it's gone. And it's gone. And it's gone. Pixar, and it's gone. And the Muppets, and it's gone. And it's gone. It's fucking gone because these idiots don't know how to handle this shit. Number 9, Doctor Who. Doctor Who with, I think, the 11th and 12th season of the show. They brought in a new showrunner who was very divisive for fans of the show. They walked back on major canon that the show had to offer. And meanwhile, Russell T. Davies, one of the most prolific producers of the series, who I think handled like the first at least 4 or maybe 6 seasons. And then Stephen Moffat, who handled like the next at least 4 seasons. Very, very successful people. Rusty T. Davis left because, he wanted to try some new things, but he came back and he did a special. So he wasn't like, I won't work for this company. And Stephen Moffat, I don't think he had any bad blood either. He was just like, moving on to some other things after doing a bunch of seasons here. But you bring them on as overseeing producers. You're bringing in some new person. Don't let them do whatever they want. You bring in the people who have already established the credibility, and you go, next season of Doctor Who, executive produced by Russell T. Davies or Stephen Moffat, and now directed, created by so-and-so who we've just brought in. And have some sort of collaborative effort where the one person who did the thing that we really like, and he knows what we like, that he's making sure that it doesn't go too far away from the thing that we love, which is exactly what happened. And now, Doctor Who is really going to have to repudiate that the seasons where all of this canon has been changed and mucked with in ways that the fans, when it comes to science fiction, like there's so many, it's very conceptual. Certain parameters are set up, and the parameters interest us. If they interest us, we'll think about it as fans forever. We'll write fan fiction, and we'll just constantly be going, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if they did an episode like this?" Everybody's got a good episode of Star Trek idea that they had at some point in time, because the basic premise of what they're doing, exploring the galaxy and going to those places, you can keep figuring out other ways to do that thing and say new things about the story, say new things about people and aliens and consciousness and the galaxy. There's new things to say constantly. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to keep moving the wheel forward and doing new things and building. All the time you hear people go, well, obviously we couldn't just come back and do the same thing. Charlie Cox was talking about Daredevil. Well, clearly we can't just come back and do the same thing. Yes, you can. You come back and you continue to build on the same thing. You build. It's not a reinvention and here it is. Let's try it like this. What the fuck? It's not let's try it like this. Superman. Granted, nowadays they want to reinvent him in all sorts of ways. But generally speaking, Superman is reinvented in very minor ways by new creative teams who come on. Largely, the best, most successful runs are the ones that build on the stuff that came before it and honor the stuff that came before it. Give a thumbs up to everything that John Burns did and then move into some new territory based on where we left, where we just came from. We were over there, now we're over here. Not, we were over there, now we're all the way over here. They're like, whoa, what the fuck? Why'd you go all the way over there? Like, there was an organic transition, and it was just a couple steps over here. That's what they got to do. All right, number 8, I'm going with The Witcher and Henry Cavill. And again, all of these are all uniquely different. There's going to be some that are going to be exactly like the freaking Gargoyles situation or the Daredevil Born Again situation. But all of these are a little bit different, but it's all the same kind of thing. Henry Cavill loves the source material. He was pushing. The first season was really close to the source material. The second season started to get further and further away from it. Cavill started to look at how far away it was going to get, and he went, I can't be a part of this anymore. Which, it's a different situation, but again, with Guillermo del Toro going, sorry, I can't do the third movie. This is not tenable for me. I'm not here. Guillermo del Toro, he's the one who continued our success. He's the one that we're currently wearing. We already fucking blew it with Stephen Norrington, but here's Guillermo. He's still right here. We haven't blown it with him yet. He's gone, and now we got to get a new director. Cavill's gone, and now we got to get a new lead actor. And he is the reason why so many people love that show. Because even when it wasn't exactly hitting the nail on the head, Cavill wasn't hitting the nail on the head. He was delivering the goods for what the audience really wanted. And when he talked about it behind the scenes, he would literally lament the same fan laments. It's a little bit off it's not really focused on The Witcher, and it's a little bit different than the books and stuff. But, I read the books, and I always try to bring it back to the center and, bring back the canon and get to the place that people want to see. That's the man you need to keep working for you. How did you let this man go? And again, why did they let him go? Power. They don't want to give an actor power in Hollywood. You don't give actors power. I'm telling you, it's a legit thing. These money people, they want power. This is the stupidity is that they have money, they have the power. The money people always have the power. I just wrote a song called Running with the Money. And me and my band are making a music video right now. But the hook is, money ain't funny when it's used this way. It should be 50-50, but you hear them say 60-40, my friend, maybe 90-10. The money always gets you in the end. And now, that's it. That's what we got. When money comes to the table, they don't go, hey, look, I got the money, you got the talent, 50-50, buddy. They go 90-10. Or actually, in reality, I'm literally working for a comic book company right now that had offered me 10%, which was why I agreed to do the book for half of my normal page rate, because I was going to get 10% of this thing that I was creating for them. And 4 or 5 issues into the thing, and this a little bit is on me because I kind of had to start working for a couple different reasons and let the contract not come to me because I thought it was kind of in good faith, and then found out, oh no, it's not going to be 10%, it's going to be 5%. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to go back and rewrite my song. 60-40, my friend, maybe 90 and 5. Maybe 95 and 5. That's the offer. 95 and 5? You can't do this without me. You can't create this comic book without me. This little idea, this little title that you want to do, it's just a title. It's just a little idea. You need somebody who can credibly deliver it and make people want more, and make people come back, make people care about this idea that you have. 50-50 is what it should be, but it's not. It's not even close, and it's going to be a long time before we actually get to that 50-50. I mean, look at the SAG-AFTRA strike and the writer's strike, and I mean, you go look at the freaking details, the details of these negotiations. I mean, you'll really start to kind of chuckle about what's actually happening here. I mean, yeah, it's like it's a cool deal for actors who can be successful on the small thing, and there's a lot of people who want to be actors. It just ends up being a pool, like many little pools of people who are just not making enough money to survive. And you're basically you're saying, we want a big pool of actors, we want to be able to pick from lots of people, we want to have our options, but at the same time, the industry there's not enough money to go around for all those people. So you end up just like lots of people are starving on the line. And ultimately, why is that? When there is a lot of money in Hollywood, there is plenty of money in Hollywood. If Hollywood had thought about taking care of its people, 100 years ago, as it was being developed, it would have created systems that supported itself. But it's not. It's essentially money came in and went, oh, cool, how do we extract money from people who have talent? That's it. That's what the entertainment business is. It's a system of extracting money from people with talent. And when the talented people get themselves into a position where they've really shown and shined themselves, and they go, look at me, look how great I did, look at what I can offer you. Instead of the studios going, yes, look at this, we've created a superstar, they go, oh fuck, this guy's gonna have power now. He's gonna have power in our negotiations. We're gonna have to pay him more money. Oh no, we're gonna have to give him creative control. Yeah, give Stephen S. Knight creative control over the Daredevil show. He has demonstrated that he deserves it. If he does a bad job on the show, take that control away. That's how it goes. It should be so fucking simple. And they just, over and over again, they shoot themselves in the foot. And honestly, the only pattern that I see with what they're doing is the power pattern. We don't want to give Henry, this actor thinks he can go talking shit about what the production company is doing, and the writers, he thinks he does know better. The whole audience is telling you he knows better. The whole audience is like, yes, Henry Cavill's the best. Keep speaking for us, Henry. And they're fighting him. They're kicking it. They're all right, go, Henry. We don't need you. You want a divorce? Get out of here. All good. That's what's being said. Moving on to number 7, we got the most recent Hellboy, which I don't understand. It's a pretty successful 1-2 of Hellboy and Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, directed by Guillermo del Toro. I love Guillermo del Toro. He's one of my favorite creative people on planet Earth, period. Man is fucking talented as hell. And I know that Hellboy didn't exactly set the charts on fire kind of thing, but they had been vocally talking about a trilogy for a really long time. And bringing the series to a conclusion based on some of the different stories in the comics and stuff, and they talked about some of these stories that they were going to adapt, that they were thinking about looking at, and fans were really interested. And I think more than fans were really interested, I think it was a big ending. It was it's an end to a trilogy. Consistency. Hellboy's good. Hellboy 2's great. Hellboy 3 brings it to a satisfying conclusion. That's the way trilogies are made, man. The fact that you didn't recognize that there was a decent chance that if you helped Guillermo del Toro get this shit together, that Hellboy 3 could have been a big financial success, probably bigger than the first two, because he was a little indie. He was known a little bit less, but over time and fan enjoyment and people building up love for all these special practical effects. And I mean, Hellboy's a really cool character because I think he appeals to the horror audience and he appeals to the geek culture audience. And I think he is a much more visually striking and interesting trailer than 90% of the trailers that'll show up. So he's offering something that most of these films don't or can't offer. And yet, this film studio went, nah, if we bring in Guillermo del Toro, he wants to control everything, and Ron Perlman, he's not like a really popular actor. He is a popular actor. He's a popular character actor with roots on television. People love him from Beauty and the Beast. People catch that show. They remember. And then he has so many notable performances, like Blade 2. He's fucking incredible in Blade 2, Ron Perlman. Love Ron Perlman. He really is a great, incredible geek culture icon. He's somebody who does lots of voices in animation, and whenever you hear that voice, you're like, oh, fuck, Ron Perlman, fucking hey, cool. This dude was cool. He's not Tom Cruise. He's not some Hollywood whatever. And Guillermo del Toro, yeah, he's an auteur who you have to give control of the thing. But shit, man, we would have been, we were waiting for that third movie. We were super stoked about it. And then you went, nah, no third movie. Probably it'll never happen. Here's a whole new one. To which the audience who was interested in the franchise, who had become interested in the franchise largely on the strength of the movies because the comic is more indie and less people that are outside of comics are aware of Hellboy, you never gave that audience a satisfying conclusion, and they were like, oh, I don't want a new Hellboy. I like the old Hellboy, and I like that series, and now they're not going to conclude it. Your audience will send you messages. And so often, honestly, it's not even just you made a bad choice. This isn't going to be as good because of you didn't use that guy. It's also going to send a message to your audience that you're not exactly paying attention, to which they will decide to send a message back to you. Pay attention. I didn't come see your movie. Maybe you can figure out why. I didn't watch your show. Maybe you can figure out why. I don't know. I just didn't show up. You're going to have to walk back and try to figure out, why didn't the audience show up? I don't know. This is so confusing, man. It's not fucking confusing. The audience didn't show up because they told you they loved this. They told you what they wanted. And then you went, nah, you don't know what you want. How about this instead? Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you very much. Okay. At number 6, I've got Rings of Power. Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. This is an interesting one because, Peter Jackson kind of dropped the ball a little bit with The Hobbit. And I mean, granted, I tend to put a lot of this stuff on studios in particular because of the different things that they want, and they end up kind of creating scenarios where, like in this case, turning The Hobbit into a trilogy was just a fucking mistake. But for Peter Jackson, it's like, oh, more time working, more money, it's cool. Maybe I could do something good with it. And at the end of the day, it's just really bloated. It's like amazing and like Shakespeare compared to Rings of Power or like the Gollum video game, but it was definitely a little bit of a step back. But I think the step back was largely due to that idea of like, well, let's bloat it. Let's turn it into 3 films. Let's pack it with a bunch of stuff that wasn't in the original book. I'm a big fan of the original book, so I was very disappointed in that Hobbit film. To this day, I want Peter Jackson to do a legit, hey, we did an edit of The Hobbit, and we just edited it down to just the fucking book as best we could. And here it is, like, 3-hour version of The Hobbit. I would happily go and rent that, watch that. There are things to like within Peter Jackson's Hobbit, but in general, it's not great. So, I mean, there was an argument maybe that the shine was off the rose a little bit for Peter Jackson and Lord of the Rings. But really, it wasn't. Really, at the end of the day, what fans loved about Peter Jackson, what fans loved about what he made in this world was that it was pretty darn on the money to the vision that Tolkien had. And again, I say you don't get rid of this person and just move on to another person willy-nilly. You make Peter Jackson an executive producer. It's not too much skin off his back to hire him to oversee. He comes in, every couple months or once a month and sees what's going on. He's involved in the planning process. He goes, yeah, no, that's great. I really think that this will be great. I think fans will enjoy this. Like, keep it up, encouraging and cool. And that's it. If Rings of Power had Peter Jackson there, the conversation would have been so different. I mean, one, because he would have been, overseeing these things. Granted, if they were still forcing in so much of the things that they forced in, people would have been still saying a lot of the same things that they said. But everybody would have said, well, wait and see. It's Peter Jackson, and he loves this material. So I'm sure he's trying to handle it as best as he can. And that's the thing. Once you have somebody who's proven that, like, they get it, and they get it the way the fans of the thing get it, you win. You won. You won the thing. You now have somebody who the fans trust. And Amazon, you got all the money in the world. You should have fucking hired Peter Jackson as an executive producer, brought him in to oversee this thing, and this, even if it was a failure, it would not have been a failure on this level. I promise. Would not have been a failure on the level that it is. 5, Ghostbusters. The recent remake, 2016's Ghostbusters. I mean, the cast, the tone, the writing, the style of the direction. They essentially threw everything out, and everything was available. Like, I know we're missing a Ghostbuster, and now we're missing the director and what, but like, there was enough of these people who were still around. Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters, part of the reason why it's so fucking cool is because Dan Aykroyd's, he's legit interested in this stuff. He's really into ghosts and the supernatural and demons and all this kind of, he's into this as like an area of study that he finds fascinating in one way or another. And that came through in his script so big time. And it comes through in the tone of the script, because the tone of the script is serious. This is a real world where these things really exist. And these are the crazy assholes who are trying to do something about it and fight ghosts and are right in the middle of it. And the shenanigans that they get up to is just sort of like the nature of living in this over-the-top supernatural world that they're willing to see and other people aren't willing to see. We believe you. Is that right? Is that what they say in the thing on the commercials? We believe you. We are ready to believe you. That's essentially what Ghostbusters is about, taking it seriously, and the humor comes from that. Not Ghostbusters 2016. The humor is just slapstick and silly, and we're moving on to these 4 women. Who are they? What are they doing here? What? Ghostbusters? Yeah, Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd. I'd love to see Ghostbusters. Who are these people? It's talk about not like getting it, like really misfiring, like, hey, we should do something more with the Ghostbusters. Let's just do something completely different. And now for something completely different and completely unsuccessful. It did not do the thing. It is not a sequel to Ghostbusters in any way, shape, or form. It is the most superficial adaptation of a thing that you possibly can see. And, my daughter enjoys the Ghostbusters thing, and, there's certain scenes that I find, like, kind of fun or funny, but only in watching it as, like, something else. I literally watch it like, well, it's not Ghostbusters, but it's some goofy little thing that plays with ghosts and supernatural, and I like ghosts and supernatural. So it's like this lesser version of the thing that we love. And that's all you can freaking hope for, really, when you go in such a divergent direction. Because like this one, it's not just about like, we didn't bring back the creative people. We tried to get a new creative person to come in and do the same thing. That's what usually happens. Hey, let's get this cheaper guy. We're going to have him come in. He's perfect. And then we don't have to pay so-and-so more money. In this case, they did like a 180 with the cast. 180. I mean, it's just, here's 4 men. Here's 4 women. With the tone, here's this realistic tone that's like, all the humor's really rooted. Okay, here's like goofy slapstick. And that's the same thing with the writing. The way the writing is, really rooted and based in reality and real supernatural stuff in the writing. Oh, no, based in nothing. Just, just goofy, whatever makes us laugh and smile a little bit. Like, really lighthearted and essentially meaningless. The whole style of the direction of that film and that franchise was just so rooted and cool, and I think important. It was a really important film, the same way that Young Frankenstein, I think, is a really important film, demonstrating about how funny things can be when they're taken seriously. You know, without somebody turning to look at the camera like, hey, that was a joke. He's like, we don't need a laugh track to laugh. We need the scenarios to be so funny that they just make us bust. Oh, God, this is really funny, this scenario. This is an absurd idea that's happening right here. This is, I'm uncomfortable. I gotta laugh. That's it. It's not goof, goof, goof. Like, that's like literally, this was like putting the name Ghostbusters on something and then making fun of something that we love for an hour and a half. Like, I mean, even when they threw Bill Murray out the window, and I don't know if it made it in the movie or was a deleted scene, they're like, he ain't Ghostbusters material. Bill Murray's not Ghostbusters material? I mean, like, I know that this is I'm sorry, it's like the antithesis of a joke. It's actually like a joke that you think that's a joke. It is. It's fucking crazy. You're like, what? I'm sorry, once it gets to a certain place, there's like a deification of people. You know, you don't go back and make fun of Jack Kirby in some fundamental way for having created the foundations of all these things and try to make fun of his style and be like, well, he's not the good artist for us. Like, that's crazy. What do you, no, he's the one that, whoa, the king. That's why we call him the king. Bill Murray, king of Ghostbusters. You don't insult the franchise like that. It's just so crazy, so tone deaf. All right, continuing on. At number 4, I've got Star Wars. All right, famously, when Disney bought the franchise, they were given an outline for the next trilogy by George Lucas. But they didn't, it was a choice. They didn't have to go that way. But here, this is what he was thinking about doing, essentially. And I went on, I'm friends with Chris Gore and Alan Ning on Film Threat, and I was helping them with the Star Wars on Trial a little while ago. And when I did Star Wars on Trial, I did a whole bunch of like impressions for them, like C-3PO and J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson and a couple ones. You can find them online. They're pretty fun, the Star Wars on Trial on Film Threat's YouTube channel. But the first thing I did was I went on in defense of Star Wars because they were having a really hard time getting people who were willing to come in and credibly defend the franchise. I'm more of a Star Trek guy. I've become a Star Wars fan because I have so many friends who love Star Wars, and I enjoy watching the films and following the exploits with my friends. And I'm also a big toy guy, so there's certain Star Wars things where I'm like, I want that ship, I want that monster. I gotta get a hold of some of these things because I love really great visual representations of an interesting science fiction future, and Star Wars has plenty of them. But it's a little bit easier for me to maybe like not be super offended because the new Star Wars isn't like hurting me in my childhood. So many people are like, oh my God, my childhood. And, the one thing that I came away with as a defense to Star Wars and what Disney has done with it is that it was not universally lauded as the bee's knees and the greatest thing that had ever been done when George went back and he did the prequel trilogy. Generally speaking, coming out of that prequel trilogy, a lot of the conversation was that, like, this is what happens when you give one man too much power. Conversations about George Lucas's ex-wife being a very major factor in sort of the tone and vibe of the original Star Wars compared to the tone and the vibe of the prequel films. Lots of different bits of finger pointing of why it was not as good or as well received as the original trilogy. So it's a little bit easier to argue why Disney maybe chose not to go that route. But there's just so much more than just Lucas and his outline. Because Lucas and his outline, these things are coming from the mind and the heart and the soul of George Lucas, who created this galaxy, who came up with all of these concepts that are being played with, and who has a lot of ideas about some of the roots of what these things mean. But the roots of what these things mean, a lot of them have already been put out into the public through the novels, through the comic books, and everything else that was done for the EU, which was shelved very quickly by Disney. And the EU shelving is the bigger problem. They could have did a trilogy based on the Thrawn saga in the books, and they could have launched that as the third trilogy. There's a number of different ways that they could have honored what had already been approved by the fans, talent that had already been approved by the fans, things that had already been approved by Lucas that fans had already approved of too. And that's what they should have done. To throw the baby out with the bathwater and just go, let's just get one of the flashiest producers. Because make no mistake, J.J. Abrams, that's his thing, man. He's flashy. He's known for taking things that are kind of niche concepts that geeks like me might be interested in, and then making it something that's mainstream by putting lots of pretty people in it and being really generally, I think J.J. Abrams' biggest skill is that he's very good at casting. For those of you who watched Lost back in the day, which I watched Lost until, what was it, the fourth season? When they are literally simultaneously leaving the island and trying to get back to the island in one season? And I was like, so this season doesn't matter because it's literally canceling itself out? I'm done. But before I was done with Lost, holy shit, what great cast. Oh, what a great cast. Before Star Trek Discovery showed up and just destroyed the franchise, like final nail in the coffin. Ugh, Black Ops, Star Trek. You had the first three J.J. Abrams produced films, which there's plenty of things that they don't exactly get right and don't exactly do a good job of. But again, it does look pretty, and the cast is fucking great. Really like that cast. I mean, it's everybody was like nail on the head. Did a good job. Honestly, I do think J.J. Abrams should become a casting director instead of a fucking filmmaker, because that seems to be his strong point. His strong point is finding the perfect actor to do the thing who I might like and be charmed by. Hey, let's get this flashy guy to come in and do the thing. A guy who's actually become known over time for being more style than substance. Star Wars is more substance than style. And that's one of the big problems with Hollywood. Hollywood, I think, George Lucas has talked about this, them getting the wrong idea about it. They see the spaceships, and George Lucas says, and 100 spaceship films get made, and they all suck because they think it's all about the spaceships. And that's not it. It's not about the lightsabers. It's about the fight between good and evil. It's about this corruption, being corrupted. It's about being able to come back from that corruption, redemption. It's so many things. It's based on the classic tropes of literature. There's a book, a really worthwhile reading book for anybody who wants to be a writer out there, called Hero with a Thousand Faces. And George is a student of that style of classic myth writing, you which is used in so much of the wonderful serials that he grew up reading, and pulps and adventure stuff, because he's an older geek, and he was geeking out for the shit, that was happening at like dime store comics and stuff back in the day. And he took all those things that he really loved, all this pulp shit, all this science fiction and fantasy, and he brought it to the big screen. If not for Star Wars opening up the world, I don't think we would have this world of superhero films and the Lord of the Rings. I don't think we would have any of them. I think Star Wars opened up that door to this stuff. This man is a credible geek. He understands because he is one of us. And to completely abandon not just his proposal, which I kind of understand abandoning his proposal. I do not understand abandoning the EU and all of the things that were there for them to play with. I mean, Mara Jade, like Luke Skywalker and his wife, they should have been introduced. Like that stuff, the building. Instead of building, they basically went, everything's exactly as you remember it. But now Han and Leia have 2 kids, and now Han's dead, and he's dead. He's dead. And it's dead. So yeah, it's not handled well. This Star Wars thing, a clear case where fans were scratching their heads a little bit that we didn't continue with the Lucas thing. But at the same time, because of what had happened and the conversation beforehand, people were like, okay, well maybe J.J. Abrams can do it. He's a big fan of Star Wars. I know I could do it. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I would do a good job. And then we get what we get, and we all got upset. And they called us racists and sexist and stuff. Thanks, guys. Not only do we hate the thing that we used to love, but now we're racists and sexist. Thanks, guys. You're the best. Hollywood fucking sucks. I always knew it. I always knew Hollywood fucking sucks. This is why I didn't want to be in Hollywood. This is why I went into comics. Like it's just I come from this place. My dad's a rock star. It's very easy for somebody who's coming from celebrity to go into TV. I've done reality TV. I've done a lot of voiceovers and narration and video games and animation. For a little while, I was like an actor. Well, I do acting every now and then. It's just acting's not really like my the thing that I love to do. But people will ask me sometimes, and I end up doing some things. And if I think I could do a good job, I'll do it. But you grow up in a thing, and you have a way better view of what that thing really is. Okay, so when you grow up with a celebrity right next to you, you grow up watching people and how they interact with other people, how they introduce themselves. You get a really good sense of what people want, what people are looking for from their interactions with people. And you start to realize how something as superficial and silly and seemingly worth nothing as like celebrity, how much it's worth to people. Celebrity, oh my God, celebrity. It's worth so much to people. They want that freaking celebrity. And it's nothing. It has nothing. And because of like superficial things like celebrity being given more power and strength is like, oh, this is valuable. It's not actually valuable. Things that are actually valuable, like good ideas and talent, they're thrown by the wayside. But look, we can get this movie star. But is the movie star going to be good for that part? Do they like that part? Do they believe in the character? Are they going to make us rewrite the whole thing specifically for them so that we can beef it up in some way that doesn't exist in the source material just so that we can make them happy enough to play the part? Like, do we have to make Black Adam not show up in the Shazam film because The Rock doesn't want to be a side character in the Shazam film? Black Adam would have done so much better if he was a side character in the Shazam film. If they had set him up, they could have even set him up just a little bit, just like a little tease. Would have helped the Shazam film, would have helped the Black Adam film, but not movie star The Rock. And, generally speaking, I love The Rock. I really do, like him as a dude, but very clear, just like Arnold and Sylvester Stallone before them, he's a guy who's got a fucking ego. It means a lot to have all these big blockbusters and be making all this money and to have all this, what? Power. And what do they not like to give you in Hollywood? Power. Don't give them power. And it's so funny, too, because when a movie like Black Adam with The Rock and it being shaped by The Rock from his executive decisions, people go, see, this is why you don't want to give the actors power. You don't want to give anybody power if they're not doing a good job. If they're doing a great job and the audience is all about it, then yes, give them power. It's the only way to do this job right. It's the only way to win, to empower the people who know how to do the job. You get the right people and then you get out of their fucking way. Okay? I'm a writer. When I brought in Greg Weisman to do the Four Horsemen Studios art book, I didn't tell him what to do. I mean, I gave him some overall ideas about what we were hoping to achieve. That I wanted, that I had the intention to basically set this up as like what could be a fantasy TV show on a cartoon that could show up on television that might appeal to an all ages audience, but also matter to an older audience. I mean, granted, he would have showed up and did something like that anyway, even if I hadn't said that. And perhaps a little framing device or two. I think I did not order him, but I had I really think that whatever you do, we want to sort of encapsulate it with this this premise about the or I don't know if it's framed at the beginning and the end, but it's like this premise about this special castle that we designed, and this was my idea. There's this 4-sided castle. Four Horsemen Studios is actually finally making it, and this was my idea for them to save some money. I was like, it'll be a 4-sided castle. It's just all the same on every side, and then they had the great idea to put these different figureheads on each of the 4 sides of the castle. And this castle is like a real central point in the universe, a little bit similar to, say, Masters of the Universe and Castle Grayskull being like a center point for the universe. The 4 corners of the castle, east, west, north, south, this was supposed to be like the center point of the universe of the Mythic Legion's world. And, that was it. Hey, here's a little bit of a framework kind of thing. And then whatever you want to do. There's no micromanaging going on. You let your dog off the chain, and he goes and he chases the ball. Go get it, Greg. Get the ball. And then Greg went and he got the ball. And what did I get? I got great results because I didn't get in his fucking way. That's what you do. You don't get in the way of your creative people. You find the right creative people that you can trust for the job, and then you trust them for the job, after you give them the bit. Hey, this is what we need from you. And then that's it. You move on. That's how good movies, comics, art of any kind is produced in collaboration with other people. And if you don't behave that way, it's gonna fall apart in your hands. It's gonna feel less and less organic, less and less right, until it isn't. And actually, this is a reason why a lot of modern music is so terrible. Because executives, they'll sit there, you have some stupid album that's going to get pushed out by the record label, and they will listen to this record, listening to like every single word, and like, maybe not this word, maybe not that. Can we change this line? Can we change that? I kind of don't like the title of that song. And now something that was organic, something that was made, that was maybe good, and usually the reason why you're getting notes is because they do like it. They just want to make sure it's as good as it can possibly be for as big as of an audience as possible. And then they start making you remove this, remove that, go re-record this, re-record that. And then before you know it, the energy that went into this thing, it's all weird. It's you going, oh, I got to fix this, and I got to fix that, and I got to fix that, as opposed to you singing a song going, oh, I love this song, and this is beautiful, and this is what it means to me. You go in, you start recording just a little line there, a little line there, a little line there. The energy of your singing becomes, okay, I'm just recording a little line. Okay, just recording a little line, just recording a little line. It loses the heart and the soul. I talk about this when I talk about AI. AI can only do so much because heart and soul is put into art. Okay? Heart and soul is put into cooking. That's why when your mom makes the cupcakes, they taste better than when somebody else makes cupcakes. I had the exact same cupcake the other day. It did not taste as good as this one my mom made because my mom put love and thought into this. Love and thought are felt by the people experiencing the thing. Love and thought are felt on a good song. Love and thought are felt in a good film or TV show. And when you start poking holes in that love and that thought, and it starts becoming overthought, and overloved, because overloved isn't loved. Overloved is maybe not this, and that's doubt, and that's fear. So as you start injecting fear and doubt, I mean, look at all of these movies that get obliterated in the editing process. You've got David Ayers, the guy who did the Suicide Squad. He's been begging for a director's cut of his movie to be released for ages now because he's so ashamed of the one that they put out compared to the movie that he made. And they superficially decided to change this movie in all these different ways after the trailer came out, and people loved the feel of the trailer. But the movie wasn't like that. The movie didn't feel like that. So they recut the movie and turned it into a mess. They did the same thing with Justice League. They brought Joss Whedon in, they had him recut the movie, turned it into a mess. Or how about this Batman Superman movie, which sucked, and then you watch the director's cut and you go, oh, well, the director's cut is significantly better. Significantly better. A bunch of superficial decisions to edit a whole bunch of things and turn a film or a song into Swiss cheese. That's the one with all the holes in it, right? Okay. Continuing on here, we've got, I'm at number 3, Lightyear, John Lasseter. Lightyear. Oh, my God. I worked on Toy Story back in the day for Boom Studios when we did the kids' comics. If you're a Toy Story fan, especially the first arc is really exceptional. That was before we had a lot of oversight on the book and had to start kind of basically, what is the word? I mean, like lowering our expectations to like what we could do and making it more infantile and kind of silly and not really matter or mean much. But the first one was meant to be a film version, like a Toy Story film, but in comics form, something that was on par with the quality of the Pixar films. One of the things that got us in trouble, though, when we did that book was we used a character named Booster, who was from the Buzz Lightyear of Star Command TV show. And John Lasseter had nothing to do with that Buzz Lightyear of Star Command show. It was greenlit by Disney, and basically he hated it. He hated it. He hated it so much that like people were nervous that John might see, because John was working at the company at the time, and he was really high up when we did this comic, that he might see it and he might be really upset that we used those characters because he hates them so much. Granted, we use them the way the toys are used in the Toy Story movies. So I don't think actually Lasseter would have read our book and been upset with it, but they were upset because they were like, oh no, the boss might not like this. Well, if John Lasseter didn't like the Buzz Lightyear of Star Command animated series, oh my God. I can tell you for fucking certain that he did not like Lightyear. And the idea that they made this Lightyear movie, I mean, this is like the foundational of this man should have been involved. He should have been involved. It's just like, you know, there's maybe films that you're like, well, that's not Monsters Inc. isn't his film, even though he oversaw it. Sure. Okay, cool. Make sure you got Peter Docter in the door, right? But Toy Story, a Lightyear film. Unfortunately, Lasseter was out the door and all this controversy during the Me Too thing. Granted, I've talked about this before. I really think that Lasseter in particular, I mean, there was plenty of other people who had this happen to them at the same time. He didn't really... When you go and you look at the allegations with Lasseter, it's all seems kind of petty and small and minor. You know, complaints about him hugging too long and things like that. I mean, this guy is one of the greatest creative people who has ever lived. The idea that you couldn't just hire a security detail to follow him around and make sure he doesn't freaking hug anybody and keep getting the wonderful creativity coming out of him that you had is insane. The idea that this movie Lightyear would be greenlit without him having any involvement whatsoever. I mean, granted, look, the proof is in the pudding. This was one of the biggest failures that Pixar has ever had. And certainly something that sent a message to the audience that, like, the people making the Pixar stuff didn't care about the Pixar stuff. You know, you want to tell your audience that we're not really paying attention and we don't really care? Do a movie like Lightyear where you forget all of the details that have been mentioned about who Buzz Lightyear is in the Toy Story films. I mean, they totally could have did something with, I think, a similar kind of tone and succeeded if they simply had matched various details that were given in the films, but they decided to literally go, nah. Like, clearly, this is not the movie that Andy was watching when he was a little kid. That's the whole premise of the movie. It's like, wow, what if we made the movie that Andy fell in love with? Oh, cool. What a great idea. Except this movie doesn't line up with any of the things that Andy or Buzz have said. So the fans who were imagining various versions of what a Lightyear film would be, well, guess what? This movie did not line up in any way, shape, or form with fans' imaginations, with fans' hopes and dreams. They just two different things. Here's this thing that they made, and then here's the hopes and the dreams of all the fans, all the way over here. Should have brought in John Lasseter. All right, we got 2 left. I'm approaching my hour here. I've been so consistently going over. But I used to edit. I would go over sometimes, then I would edit like a lot of things down. And when I didn't edit for my birthday, I listened to the show and I actually liked it better, not hearing like some of the choppy edits I would do. Sometimes I would go in and I would get rid of likes and ums and things like that. I try not to talk like that. I try to be good and not repeat myself. Sometimes, though, I have a little dyslexia. Sometimes I'll say the wrong word. Instead of magazine, I'll say book, or TV show, I'll say film. So for those of you who listen at home and you hear me occasionally get things wrong or sit there going, forgive me. But I do actually like the feel and the vibe of you just being here in the room with me and me not being so self-conscious of how I'm talking and what I'm saying. I had a couple podcasters kind of suggest that to me. They're like, I don't edit any of them. I think it sounds better. And I tried it for my birthday and I agreed. So I've just been letting them go a little long and let myself do my thing. So I'm probably going to go at least like 15 more minutes because I'm at number 2 and number 1 on this list. And they're 2 of my favorite fucking properties on planet Earth. So I'm going to talk about them as long as I feel like it. But it's Star Trek. And you'll want to wait around to the number 1. So Star Trek. Holy shit. So I don't know if you guys know this, but like there was like a Star Trek renaissance that went on for like a while. We had Star Trek The Next Generation. We had Star Trek Deep Space Nine. We had Star Trek Voyager. We had Star Trek Enterprise. I love all of these shows. I mean, Voyager has my favorite character, the Doctor. He is my favorite character. A close second is Worf, which is one of the reasons why my favorite show is Deep Space Nine, because Deep Space Nine continued Worf's story. Worf is one of the few characters in Star Trek who got the longest story arc of all the characters because he was in all 7 seasons of The Next Generation, and then he was in 4? I'm pretty sure 4 seasons of Deep Space Nine. And his story arc's freaking wonderful. Love Deep Space Nine. Such a freaking fun show. Deep Space Nine is that Black Ops show that Star Trek Discovery was trying to be without being a stupid Black Ops show. You know, it honored what Star Trek was, but it did something that was a little bit more action-packed, that was a little darker, that featured some real kind of crazy stakes and stuff. If you've never watched Star Trek Deep Space Nine, I really highly recommend it. And honestly, if you love it so much, when you get to the part where like Worf shows up, you need to go back and watch Star Trek Next Generation so you can see all of his character development that went in for those 7 seasons and then goes. I mean, Star Trek is some of the greatest viewing of my life. It's a show kind of like The Twilight Zone where, you never know what you're going to get. Every episode can be something really new and interesting, and some of them will just blow you away. There's so many things to be said when really wonderful science fiction is being delivered. And the amount of shows that they did, that's 7 seasons of Voyager, 7 seasons of Deep Space, 7 seasons of Next Gen, 4 seasons of Enterprise. Do you know how many hundreds, if not thousands, of wonderful creative people have proven themselves able to work on Star Trek, able to deliver things that the fans of the source material would just adore? And we finally had a recent success with Picard Season 3. Why? Because they brought in a showrunner who knew Star Trek, who had done it before, who knew what he was doing. He knew what the fans would like. And then what happened? Huge success. Granted, I didn't watch that shit because as far as I'm concerned, the only power that I have in this situation is my time and my money and my attention. And I'm not giving that shit any fucking attention until I get some new stewards of the Star Trek franchise. And there are so many to choose from. There are so many directors and writers and people who love this stuff, who work directly with Gene Roddenberry, who understood where he was coming from, who understood the point of the series, what they were trying to accomplish there. These people are alive. You can hire them. But nah, you want to go hire all the shiny, happy people. Oh, these people are the shiny ones. They're the ones who are current day popular. They're popular at the moment. A lot of the Star Trek writers, they're like, nerdy dudes. Nerdy dudes like us. Kind of nebbish, meek kind of guys. And I've said before, the nebbish and meek amongst us, we are talented people because we spend most of our time working on our craft as opposed to working on socializing. Yeah. The people who work on socializing, they get good at socializing, and they use their good socialization to get jobs. The people who are really good creatively, we tend to spend most of our time being creative as opposed to being super social. That's not like our focus. Our focus is being creative. I don't go on vacation. I work all the time. I go on vacation like with my family or with my friends or girlfriends, because I get invited. Hey, come with me to Hot Spring, or let's go do this. And I go, okay. I'm just always up to my neck in creativity, trying to do the things that I do, trying to learn and be better at what I do now, tomorrow. I want to be better tomorrow than I was today. It's very simple. So, oh my God, Star Trek. There's just so many people. It's not just 1 or 2 people. It's so many people who they could be hiring, who would do a great job, and yet they're not doing it. They're not doing it. All right, it's the last one. It's the last one, and it's the biggest fucking fuck you to the fans ever. And I know I talk about this a lot. I include it in geek culture, and I don't even know if it's necessarily like if you would consider it a part of traditional geek culture, but it is for me. It's my first love, and that's the Muppets. The fact the Muppets have not hired Frank Oz to come in, not just to play Miss Piggy and to play Fozzie Bear and to play Sam Eagle and to play the various characters that he is associated with. But that man is a brilliant director. He directed one of my favorite films of all time, my single favorite musical of all time, Little Shop of Horrors. Incredible flick. So funny, so enjoyable. Frank Oz is one of the most talented people on planet Earth. Disney could hire him. They could bring him in to oversee the Muppets. He's talked about it. Frank Oz has talked about it, about how they don't want to bring him in. They don't want to give him any, what? P-O-W-E-R, power, no power. We don't want to give you power, Frank. Isn't it crazy to think that somebody like Frank Oz, as the head of the Muppets thing, immediately you're like, yeah, Frank Oz has been put in a position of power. And right now, it's like Frank Oz doesn't exist anymore. These creative people, they're here, they exist, they've already delivered the goods. You just have to hire them. Just fucking hire these people. I watched the Muppets Haunted Mansion the other day, and they recast Gonzo. David Golez doesn't perform Gonzo. Are you out of your fucking minds? This shit is insane. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Pepe the King Prawn and Bobo the Dancing Bear and everything that Bill Beretta does. I think he's fucking phenomenal as Earl Sinclair. I think he is one of the most talented puppeteers to come out of the Muppets. But he is not Frank Oz. He's not David Golez, who originated Gonzo, who's been there, up to his elbows in the Henson brand and like what this is, what this means. People who are there, like the people who were alongside Gene Roddenberry working with him. These are the people you need to bring in to oversee the new group to make sure that it gets done right. But I mean, there's one name. There's only one name that matters when it comes to the Muppets, because Jim is dead, and that is Frank Oz. Disney, it's not too late. Get your fucking head out of your ass. Call up Frank Oz and get him in here before he dies. He's going to die. He's not going to be here much longer. And you will have squandered our ability to see what could have been, to get some more Frank Oz doing Miss Piggy, some more Frank Oz doing Fozzie Bear. You guys are just, you're killing the properties. You're killing the properties. Star Wars is dead, and I don't think it can come back because Leia is dead. If you let Frank Oz die, I don't think the Muppets will ever come back to what they were. Unless you put somebody like me in charge, and I can frickin', and I'm going to have to fucking prove it. I'm going to have to demonstrate to y'all what this shit's supposed to look like. And I know that I can. And I know that there are other people who can too. But unfortunately, you don't know until you get to see somebody go do it. And it's just going to be a crapshoot. Just waiting to see if they finally bring in the creative people who are going to bring this brand back to what it was. Bring it back to the center where it started. Before all these new voices want to come in and add their own little spin on the thing that they barely understood to begin with. Frank Oz understands the Muppets. Frank Oz is the Muppets. I mean, really. It's Jim and it's Frank. Frank is the funny one. Frank is where so much of the comedy came from. Jim's great too. But Jim is like a straight man to Frank Oz. You want to make some fucking funny Muppets comics? I mean, Muppets programs? Bring Frank Oz in. This man has directed so many films at this point. He has proven over and over and over again how talented he is. It's crazy. It makes me want to pull my hair out of my head when decisions like this are made. It's so simple. It's so easy to give us what we want. If you're just paying attention to who's doing it right, and if you're willing to give power to some of these brilliant people who deserve that power and that trust. Well, that's all I got for you today. I'm your passionate geek culture compadre, Jesse Blaze Snider. You can write to me at jesseblaze@jessesnider.com, or you can follow me at the place where the tweets happen. What am I? Coolest Geek JBS. Anyway, I love you all so much. I appreciate you listening to my show, and I hope you'll join me again next Saturday and this coming Wednesday for another electrifying episode of the Coolest Geek Alive. Ha ha!
It's my favorite part! Isn't it heavy? I played that. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Coolest alive. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Stay with your tribe. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Revenge of the Geeks. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Week after weeks. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Laughing with you. It's gonna be fucking awesome. And crying sometimes too. It's awesome. Spilling it out. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Making you shout.
You've been listening to Coolest Geek Alive with me, your host, Jesse Blaze Snider. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe for more excellent geek culture content. Thanks for listening.
You like that? It's a kazoo solo. I played that too. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Talking some shit. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Living your shit. My voice gonna be fucking awesome. Food in our mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Get in the mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Tell all your friends. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Call right or text. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Raising the bar. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Straight to the stars. It's gonna be fucking awesome. It's starting soon. It's going to be fucking awesome. Fucking awesome. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Just wait. You'll see. You'll all see.
The Podcast Playground.